Namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I have the pleasure of company of author Sinu Joseph ji. Sinu ji, namaskar.
Namaste, Shriji, and thank you for having me here.
And it's a pleasure, madam. And viewers, for a change, I am going to have a guest host, Sahana Singh ji, who's going to be talking to our guest Sinu ji about her new book, Ritu Vidya. Sahana ji, you are the host now. Please take it away. And thanks once again for offering to host this program for us.
Thank you. Namaste to everyone. It is a great pleasure to discuss Rutu Vidya, which to my mind is a much needed book that fills the gaps in our understanding of menstruation and beyond. I'm absolutely thrilled to be with Sinu Joseph in this program. Uh, and so about this book that I read before it was launched, Sinu was kind enough to share it with me. So it confirmed what many of us knew instinctively, that our ancestors had gained a remarkable understanding of the natural world right down to the subatomic level. So I am really excited to be discussing the book with Sinu. So let me just quickly give a kind of a review of the book before we go on to talk to Sinu. So, what I found is that the book Ritu Vidya gives a good understanding of Ayurveda. It's not just talking about menstruation, but it also tells you more about Ayurveda than you probably know. You might think you know, but if you hear it in Sinu's words, you understand it a little better. So I've not read too many books on Ayurveda, but I've read plenty of articles. I don't claim to have read a lot, but until I read Ritu Vidya, I really did not understand how specifically our diet influences what we feel during our period. So, the book introduced me to terms like ama, which made a lot of sense. And in fact, even modern terms like free radicals and antioxidants that we tend to use freely, I understood those words better after reading the book. And I also got a better sense about how modern medical research has failed to make inroads into quantum biology. We all hear about quantum physics, but Sinu mentions quantum biology. And the concept of stula sharira, which I see that this is being explored constantly by modern medicine, but sukshma sharira is being completely overlooked. And then what I found most fascinating about Sinu's book was the insight that every month a woman gets an opportunity to conduct a test on the state of her overall health by examining her own period. This is something, in a way, it is revolutionary to think this way. So the bleeding patterns and the color of the blood, the quantity of blood, the texture of the blood, all these are indicators of the state of health of a woman. So if a woman can be trained to decode the state of her menstrual health, she can take corrective action. So I think Ritu Vidya is a book that every woman should read in order to understand her body better and to go beyond and understand nature itself. And if men read it, I think they'll become better men. So this is my brief review of the book. So now I have prepared a set of questions for Sinu. Let me just go over them, and I'm hoping Sinu will give her vast, expansive answers. So the first question is, Sinu, what is Ritu Vidya? Because in general parlance, we understand Ritu as season. So we say Varsha Ritu, Grishma Ritu, and so on. So what does Ritu Vidya actually mean?
So, thank you, Sahana, for beautifully introducing the book and for being so willing to come on board and have this discussion with me. Really, thank you for that. So, I'm going to keep my answers crisp so that if there are any follow up questions, I will take that instead. So, this is the book, Ritu Vidya. And as you said, Ritu in Sanskritam does mean seasons, but it also means menstruation. And Vidya, as many people already know, means knowledge. So, Ritu Vidya is a term I coined which encompasses all the various indigenous knowledge systems which are native to Bharat and through which we can understand menstruation a lot more holistically. So it includes, as you mentioned, Ayurveda. It includes bits of Prana Vidya where required. It includes the knowledge of Tantra, without which we simply cannot understand many of our present cultural practices. It includes the knowledge of Mantra Vidya to some extent, Agama Shastras, Yoga, Darshanas, and all of these knowledge systems, which we need to understand even to decode the most simple practice pertaining to menstruation. So that's a very short summary of what Rutu Vidya means, Sahana.
Right. Thank you. And then the next question is about menarche. So in your book, you have spoken at length about menarche. You have described how menarche is celebrated traditionally and how it's almost like a marriage ceremony. So can you tell us a little more about menarche celebrations, the rituals? And also, do you think we urban women should bring back the menarche rituals that used to be very traditional, but now we have given them up? Do you think we should bring them back in cities?
Sure. So one of the things, whenever we talk about the culture, we feel that it is something to be preserved just because it is a culture, as if it is symbolic of something. But the real way to keep alive a culture is to live it, not just in spirit, but also by understanding its purpose. So, with every chapter of this book, what I have tried to explain is the scientific rationale and the reasons for these cultural practices. And it's the same with the menarche celebration also. There are, very quickly, if I have to touch upon, if you talk of the purpose, when we look at the practices that are in existence for menarche rituals in South India, there are very specific food that is prescribed. And if you study it further, as I've mentioned in my book, all of this particular food, whether it's turmeric powder or sesame seed or the black gram or the khichdi, all of these have antioxidant properties. And that is beneficial for women during menstruation because your body goes into a process of oxidative stress. And to counter that, food that is rich in antioxidants can do wonders. So this kind of a scientific knowledge has been put into these rituals. And the other part is the spirit of it. Many urban girls also have this thing that menarche rituals have to be celebrated, but they do it in a sort of a forced way and they don't really feel happy about it. They end up feeling embarrassed. So we need to understand why was it celebrated in the first place. And that has to do with the way our attitude towards menstruation can influence our experience of it. There is so much of understanding of it in our indigenous sciences that when you feel positive about something, it impacts the way you experience it. In the language of modern medicine, we can call this as episodic memory. So basically what that means is if your first period was a happy and pleasant one, all your subsequent periods will put you subconsciously into the same experience that you had during your first period. But if your first period was an embarrassing one or a stressed out one, something that you felt very negative about, then every subsequent period, your body unknowingly responds to that first memory. So this was the reason why menarche was celebrated. So this needs to be understood first. And it's true with all the cultural practices. I think the time has come where even if we decide to do something because it's our culture, we should do it with some knowledge and understanding of its purpose. And it is also incorrect because many people think that this is only native to South India and people in Central and Northern India do not have these rituals. But that is only a recent phenomenon. Traditionally, across the land that we call Bharat, menarche rituals existed. In northern and central parts of India, due to invasions, people stopped announcing that the girl child has come of age, and that's how these practices died away. But otherwise, this is something that is true to all of us. It is not something that only a certain set of people in India did. It belongs to all of us and it has to be revived, but by understanding and knowing it, both its purpose as well as its spirit.
Right. And also, do you think traditionally people were talking a lot about it because, were they like in casual conversations, would they talk about their menstruation, or was it something that they would, something that's discussed in hushed tones? Would you have this is what's the sense that you get? I mean, I would associate it with Victorian prudery. I mean that but just want to know from you since you have moved amongst the masses.
So, what I have found is that the response to conversation on menstruation is slightly different between our current rural population, especially in southern India, and the current urban population. For example, when I travel to villages and I do workshops on menstruation, it's usually out in the open under a banyan tree, for example. And it's not just the village women who gather, even the men join these conversations. In fact, I ask the women, is it okay if the men are there? Or would you rather have them leave? And they say, no, what is there to hide? it has it is a very normal thing in villages that men are part of this conversation because every month women get to take a menstrual leave, and at that time it's the men who take over. They do the household chores, they do the cooking, so it's very natural that they are involved and part of this conversation. Whereas in urban areas we have wrongly understood empowerment to mean forcing oneself to be physically the same as men. So the advertisements tell us that if you just wear a sanitary napkin, you can go rock climbing or lift a car and whatever it is. It's so funny, but does the sanitary napkin change your internal dynamics in any way? Does it make you less tired? And which woman would want to go rock climbing when she has a period? Right? She'd much rather rest. But urban women have been so confused by this notion of artificial empowerment that they have started to hide conversations about menstruation, and urban men are just not knowing how to respond. They look at us, and if we talk openly about it, they're relieved. But otherwise, this whole thing of feminism and being sexist, that runs through the minds of urban men, and I almost feel sorry for them. They are no longer natural around a conversation which should have been so normal and so natural as it is in our villages.
That's right. In fact, I have an observation of when I was watching this TV series called Friends, the American TV series, and
Yes.
they talk freely about sex and everything, but they never mention menstruation. So I felt as if the taboo is more on that side. in the
Very
West.
true. Very true. Very true. In fact, in India, it's such a normal thing because it's part of our culture.
Right.
In fact, for the menarche celebrations, the girl's uncle, her mama, plays a very key role, especially if you see the rituals in Andhra. And it is the uncle who has to give her special gifts, and
Wow.
he is a key. Yeah, it's a very important role that he plays. So it's not just the girls who come to the menarche function; it's all the men and the boys in the village are also invited. Funnily enough, in one of the villages where I was working, and one of the MLAs were also involved with us. One of the things that he told us that he has to take time off is to go visit a menarche ritual. So it's not just weddings and funerals. Menarche ritual is a very important thing, and men are also very much part of it.
Yeah,
So
I
this
think
whole notion that
yeah, I know. I think
India
we need
has
to
this
bring it back. Yeah, go on. Sorry. Yeah.
So this whole notion that in India we have a stigma around it is so completely false. At least I can for sure say that that is not the case in southern states. It is not the case in northeast. Maybe to some extent in central and north India because of the influence of outside cultures. But wherever we have been able to retain our culture and traditions, it is certainly not a stigma. Far from it.
Right. So I'm glad you mentioned the sanitary napkins because that's the next question that I have. So we in the cities have been largely conditioned by the commercials of sanitary napkins that we have been watching from our childhood, and obviously in the rural areas they still maybe prefer a washable cloth stuffed with cotton. But nowadays, I'm hearing of machines that are being installed, which will make sanitary napkins for the villages right there, so that the rural women can use them. How good are these machines? Have you evaluated them?
Well, I've had personal experience with this pad making machine, which became very popular, and there's a movie on it. And I'll tell you of my first and the only time when I distributed sanitary napkins was in this village in Kolar where I was working. It's one of the districts in Karnataka. And in this government school, along with Rotary, we went and distributed these sanitary napkins for free. Rotary sponsored it. And these were these ones made by these machines. And a week later, the person from Rotary went back, to take photographs and to get the feedback as they usually do. The mothers of the girls actually came and had a big fight, saying, "Why are you dumping this cheap stuff on us? If we want to give our girls sanitary napkins, we don't mind spending for it and buying the commercially available ones. Stop dumping this on us." Okay, so that was my first experience, and then I myself tried using it. The quality is pathetic, definitely not comparable to any of the commercially available ones. The gum does not come off properly. I mean, there are so many issues with it. And the last time I heard, which was about a year ago, because the government and NGOs and everyone gave a big push to this, was that those pads were being used to clean tables because women could not. Seriously, I mean, that was the most useful thing they found it. It was a good thing, like a tissue that you can use it to wipe tables after having a meal. So this is the reality of it. If you see, there are existing studies and reports of how this has failed across India. There are no standards of hygiene, of checks that are in place. How do you sanitize when you're doing it locally? What is the sanitization process? Who checks it? Who gives the stamp that this is fine? So there are a lot of issues about its usability itself. But having said that, why are we even talking about sanitary napkins? And why do we make this association that menstruation equals sanitary napkins or whatever product for that matter? Because it somewhere means that we think that women were created as incomplete and needing this thing to make them complete. Creation was never like that. Creation did not make us in a way that we are dependent on something. There are NGOs talking about sustainable menstruation. And it's funny because in the name of sustainable menstruation, they're making women dependent on products for which they have to pay out of their pockets, which was never the case in India. Sustainable menstruation means managing your period with what you have at home. That is what is sustainable. And Indian women knew that better than anyone else. Now, those who might be raising eyebrows and saying, "Oh, what about all the diseases that happen?" The most ridiculous thing I've heard is that you can get cervical cancer if you use cloth, which is funny because cervical cancer comes from a virus. And by using a cloth, how do you think a virus will enter? The kind of false information that has percolated the market just to sell this product is mind-boggling. All the statistics out there that are popular, which say only 12% women use sanitary napkins in India, and all the others are using sand, ash, etc. That is from a study that is non-existent. Okay, that study does not exist. So the numbers that do exist.
Uses sand or ash? I mean, nobody uses. You've never seen that?
No, I haven't. The so-called bad thing which I have seen is that there are women in Raichur. I came across about 100 women who I surveyed who do not use anything during their period. Now, how do you look at this? How do you understand if this is a good or a bad thing? Is obviously by seeing if that has any impact on their menstrual health, isn't it? So when we talk of any product, we need to ask, does it cause menstrual disorders? Heavy menstrual bleeding or menorrhagia, delayed period, amenorrhea, period pain, dysmenorrhea, PCOS, endometriosis. None of them have anything to do with whatever product you use or don't use. So the women that I came across who were not using any product had far better menstrual health than the urban women who are using so many products, maybe multiple products at the same time. So the first thing we need to understand is menstruation is not equal to products. That is something I don't know how to drive home this point. And Ritu Vidya is not about products. It is about everything that conversations on menstruation should be, but is not. Knowledge of menstruation should mean how do you prevent menstrual disorders? What is the kind of diet and lifestyle and the way you need to look at menstruation itself? That is what will help us. It really does not matter what you use as long as you know how to use it right. And of all the products that are there in the market, the worst is the sanitary napkin. The sanitary napkin and the tampons. Because the minute you use something that does not allow aeration, because these products, sanitary napkins especially, contain a layer of plastic because they're trying to prevent you from staining, because staining is such a bad thing according to all the advertisements, right? So it prevents breathability and it causes buildup of moisture. And when you collect blood like that in that region for long periods of time, you make yourself susceptible to vaginal infections. Whereas when you use a cloth, a loose cloth, as traditionally women used, you allow it, it continues to be breathable. And because it does not retain the moisture for long periods of time, women are forced to change it at more frequent intervals. And thereby, naturally, there is a better hygiene. So the traditional practices did so much for women and for nature. Now, in the name of modernizing, we are trying to make cloth pads, which is a ridiculous idea, because if you're using something reusable, you should be able to wash it, open it, and dry it in the sun. But a cloth pad is stitched on all the edges. So even if it's washable, the inner layers will never be sterilized with the sunlight. So we must stop trying to convert traditional practices and mix it with this idea of a pad and then create a khichdi which is neither this nor that. If we want to do something in the line of products, what we need to do is make it okay for women to take a menstrual leave. The minute women are comfortable doing that, they will naturally pick products that are good for themselves and for nature. If we think that during menstruation women have to work and go rock climbing like Priyanka Chopra does in that advertisement, that's when we become so confused about the product. So all traditional practices and products came with many things associated like leave and taking rest, which made it possible for them to use a piece of cloth. So if you want to promote hygiene, we need to promote a menstrual leave. That is far more important than the product that we recommend usually.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yes, of course, menstrual leave is a whole different discussion altogether. I don't know. Now that we are in the period of lockdown, maybe that also will become irrelevant because we are already at home. We can manage it better. So
Yes.
I was also wondering why there is no large study comparing the menstrual health of women who are following the traditional practices and also the diet, and the women who are not following traditions as well as diet. Of course, you have done a small study in Karnataka, but a large study, a national study comparing different states. Don't you think that would be very useful?
The answer is very straightforward, Sahana. Until we all start talking about this, how many people actually think that our cultural practices have any value? They think that it is just out of respect for culture that women are doing it, or out of fear of breaking tradition. They don't realize that our cultural practices actually prevent menstrual disorders. And when you don't realize this, why will you study it? But interestingly, if you look at the existing studies, for example, there is a study done by a pediatric medical students, I think I think it was a medical college in Nagpur, where they studied adolescent girls in a rural setting and adolescent girls in an urban setting. They were funded to study the usage of sanitary napkins, by which they concluded those who use more sanitary napkins mean they have better hygiene. And in passing, the study mentions that among the rural adolescent girls, dysmenorrhea, that is period pain, is around 48%. And among the urban adolescent girls, it is around 78%. But the study concludes saying that Unlike urban girls, very few rural girls are using sanitary napkins, and therefore they have very poor hygiene. And we need to focus on bringing awareness to rural girls.
Hmm.
The studies that are already there and that are giving you this information is not being taken seriously because we are obsessed with this thing that menstruation equals sanitary napkins. I mean, it's right there. It's telling you that only 48% girls in the rural setting have dysmenorrhea. Shouldn't that question even arise? How come? If sanitary napkin is such a big thing, how come the health-wise the rural girls are better? I have studied over 150 papers on menstrual health, not hygiene, menstrual health. That is, it looks at parameters of dysmenorrhea, menorrhagia, and all of these menstrual disorders in different settings. I've studied these papers belonging to India as well as developing and developed countries. And the numbers that we are looking at is already there. So in India, in any study that you take among adult women, not more than 20% have reported heavy menstrual bleeding. In England, the same is 52%. Okay. So, like this, for just about every menstrual disorder, if someone can even put together the existing studies, the reality becomes very obvious. But it's not happening because we don't feel that our cultural practices have a purpose that is far more than just symbolic.
So you are saying that there are already existing studies that that show that rural women have fewer menstrual health problems as compared to urban women. Those studies are there, but
Absolutely,
they're not
yes.
headlined. They're not headlined, and they're not, people don't know about them yet.
They're not. I've written a blog and I have referred 90 of these studies. And I have compared the menstrual health of women in India, women in developing countries, and women in developed countries. And surprisingly, just like India, if you look at Kenya, if you look at Nigeria, if you look at Vietnam, if you look at Philippines, they also have actually a much lower prevalence of menstrual disorders like India. Because, like India, in all ancient societies, where there are cultural practices around menstruation, whether it is about taking rest or diet, all of these play a huge role in preventing disorders. But these are not the studies anyone's looking at. They're only looking at how many women are using cloth, how many women are using sanitary napkins, and miraculously concluding that this equals menstrual health and it has nothing to do with menstrual health.
Well, I certainly hope this comes into the discourse because this is an eye opener. Most people wouldn't know that the rural women have fewer health problems, right? Most people,
Yes.
even I thought there are probably not enough studies, but you are saying just the opposite. Okay.
See, and the other thing, very quickly, I'd like to mention, Sahana, who's going to fund a study which shows that rural women actually do not have problems? Studies are there to find problems among rural women, and studies on menstruation are funded by product makers with very clear, pre-decided intention that go find a problem which will justify us opening up new markets in the rural areas. So the kind of study that you are talking about, who's even going to fund it? And what will be the outcome? Who benefits?
Let's say we find someone who funds it and we actually have a proper study. I would love to see you at the head of such a research study, and then it gets headlined as, rural women enjoying better health, better menstrual health, despite not using sanitary napkins. That's something we really need to know.
It's actually because they don't use sanitary napkins.
Despite not using sanitary napkins, they
Yes.
are doing better. That is the thing which needs to hit the newspapers. So
Yeah.
otherwise, we'll have these movies like Padman and all that, which
Yes.
make it seem like there's a do-gooder who is giving sanitary napkins to rural people and making their lives easier, right? Just like the toilet thing.
Absolutely. True.
So now I come to the area of my area of study, which is India's educational heritage. So I was wondering, in what manner can menstrual education be included in our syllabus? Because now we have the new education policy. So right now it is just menstruation is being taught in biology classes as a kind of a failed reproduction. So when it didn't happen, when the fertilization didn't happen, that's when all this disaster of menstruation happens. That's the kind of impression that's being given. So how should this topic be introduced in schools to boys and girls?
So I would like to expand the scope of it a little bit, Sahana, since you are in that field of figuring out how to change things in the education sector. It is not just the knowledge of menstruation. It is the knowledge of every single thing that we do as part of our culture and tradition. If we have to understand that holistically and be able to talk about it and explain it to the next generation, we cannot do it without introducing Indian knowledge systems in the curriculum. So when we talk about digestive system, reproductive system, excretory system, etc., you introduce that to children. Also introduce the meaning of the three doshas of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Introduce what the dhatus mean. Introduce what prana means. Because without this knowledge, forget menstruation, you simply cannot understand any of the cultural practices, and the disconnect between parents and children and this culture and the education will simply keep widening. I don't see how India can reclaim its culture without living it, and I don't see how we can live our culture without understanding our knowledge systems. So it's not this piecemeal approach of, we used to have such a rich culture, oh, we were so great. And it's not that alone. We need to bring that back to life. We need to know those things and teach those things which our ancestors knew. We need to introduce that there is a science of Tantra Shastra without which our temples will be nothing more than beautiful architectural buildings, which it is not just that, it's a lot more than that. Every of our practice, if that understanding has to deepen, it cannot happen without introducing our native knowledge systems in our exam curriculum. There are efforts being made, and it's wonderful. We're introducing yoga, we're introducing art, we're introducing dance. We are so much of effort people like you are making into introducing the right knowledge of the history of this country. I would just say let's also introduce our sciences, the science of the Sukshma Sharira, because once that foundation is laid, Ritu Vidya is but natural. I did not arrive at this without that knowledge, and it is not possible to teach menstruation holistically without the knowledge of our Indian sciences.
So that's amazing. So what you are actually saying is that don't just talk about reproduction or menstruation in isolation, but present the whole civilizational picture with Ayurveda, with all the various foundational concepts, and then weave in menstruation also in it to talk about how that.
It will be natural. It will be natural that they will be able to understand the cultural practices around it. You will not have to specifically talk about that.
Right.
If time permits, can I give you one example?
Sure, why not?
So, when we talk about Varnas, there's so much discussion around it, and you have beautifully explained it in terms of occupation in your book also. There is one more way of looking at it if we understood the science of chakras.
Hmm.
Each of the Varnas, the people who belong to each of the Varnas, operate from specific chakras. And therefore, there are restrictions on practices pertaining to that. So we see that those who operate from the higher chakras are more spiritual in nature. Those who operate from the chakras in the navel are more ambitious in nature. They were those who led the ambition. Those who operate from the lower chakras were those who work to sustain day-to-day life. This is an understanding. And if this comes in, the question will never arise as to why some people were told to do this and not do that. Because we understood how it would affect your body because of the way you operate from different chakras. And so many of these things about our culture, the misunderstandings have happened because we haven't understood our subtle sciences. We're only talking at very, very simple levels, and especially with the language of the Western sciences. We are trying to use that framework to explain our tradition, and that's why there are so many arguments. So it's not just about menstruation. All those things about our tradition which have been misunderstood, if that understanding has to be changed, it cannot happen without the knowledge of our native sciences.
Amazing. You give refreshing insights. So I always come back richer after talking to you. So I thank you so much, Sinu. This has been a very stimulating discussion. I hope more people will read Ritu Vidya and begin to appreciate the immense wisdom that has been coded into our menstrual practices. You've shown us how to connect back with our civilization, and that gives a very positive feeling. So thank you so much, Sinu.
Thank you, Sahana. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sahana ji, for that wonderful hosting session. And Sinu ji, you are a fount of inspiration. I'm thinking, I'm just struck by the one thing that you said, that we are understanding or trying to understand our own civilization using a language that perhaps was not the best suited for it. And therefore, a lot of stuff is actually literally getting lost in translation. One thing I want to place a thought in the minds of everyone who's watching this is, when the nation of Israel was formed, anyone seeking citizenship to Israel, they had to be Jewish, and if they were, they could get the citizenship of Israel. But the first thing that they did was they said, you have to learn Hebrew. You cannot be a true Israeli citizen unless you learn Hebrew. And this was sort of forced on people because the Jews had scattered for thousands of years across the world, but they had this this important restriction or condition that they had to learn that language. And I'm hoping, with 1.3 billion people, perhaps it is difficult to say you shall learn Sanskrit, because that is where most of your culture is buried in. And I should have to include myself in this group, that I have learned Sanskrit, but I've forgotten most of it, and I can only remember bits and pieces. That unless you understand the language in which your culture existed, you really cannot understand or fathom the beauty of it. Sinuji, I really, really wish that your book is read by each and every individual, men included. And I know we are, as a group, I'm speaking for everybody, perhaps I'm stereotyping, we tend to not talk about or think about this. And this is most unfortunate. And even when we come up with movies around it, it's sort of like more marketing oriented. But be that as it may, I hope that this opens up the eyes to many people who are watching this, who are suffering from menstruation problems, or even otherwise just understanding the culture. This is a fantastic effort on your part. More power to you, and hoping that we'll have more such book reviews hosted on PGuru's platform. Thanks, Sinuji, and thank you, Sahana ji.
Thank you, Shriji, for the opportunity. Thank you so much.